So this route here to Friendship, Pennsylvania. I'm going to Saputo Dairy for a drop and hook. They're supposed to have the trailer loaded anywhere between 1 p.m. and 8 p.m. So no guarantees. So I've been taking my time, stopped and took a break, ate lunch, played with Trucker, entertained her for a while. But this is really slow going, man, I tell ya. They probably gave it to me because I'm such a good driver. Anyway, this is Sasquatch country if I ever seen it. I mean, look at the hills. The hills are just thick forest everywhere. And everybody lives down in the valleys along the rivers. Nobody lives up in the hills. I know Sasquatch does. Sabe. S-A-B-E with a slash above the E, I guess, or something like that. I forget what they call it. But I'm doing between 45 and 55. All these other trucks are doing 80, I swear. They're hauling ass on these roads. They're just stupid. I mean, like, look at this guy. He's fucking hauling ass, man.
In 2 miles, continue straight on to East Center Street.
Anyway, I'd like to canvass these houses and knock on some doors and ask them questions about strange going-ons.
You have 0 hours and 59 minutes until you exceed the 14
So anyway,
limit in accordance with the USA Federal Hours
I was
of
listening
Service
to
Regulation
Steve's
Section 395.3
YouTube channel today, and his new video had a couple stories from Kentucky. So I'll share one that I heard from a guy in Kentucky. I'm not too proud. I'll say I did 9 months in prison. That's where I met the guy. He was a straight up, serious, honest biker dude. I couldn't even get him to smile. I think maybe once I did.
Continue straight on to East Center Street.
Well, I met him in the day room watching TV, and we started chit-chatting, and told me where he was from, and right away I said, aha! So I asked him, what do you think about Sasquatch? He just kept looking at the TV. He said, yeah, I saw him. I saw one. I saw 2. I said, really? So I asked him to tell me his story. I don't know exactly where it was at. I didn't ask for details. I was lucky to get the story out of him the way it is. That's usually how it goes. People don't want to talk about it because every time they have in the past, they've gotten ridiculed, and so they just shut their trap and don't say nothing to anybody for years until somebody like me comes along and genuinely asks them that I want to hear their story.
Continue straight on to East Center Street.
Nice little hill town.
Proceed north on East Center Street in a quarter mile. Continue straight
People out
on
on
to
their
US
motorcycles.
290.
Like I said, look at these people got better things to do than to make up Sasquatch stories. They're all living their lives. But he said he was driving through a area that a forest fire had
Continue
gone
straight
through.
onto US 290.
And he said there's smoldering logs and trees and stuff around. And
in 6.5 miles, turn right to
up
Market
on
Street.
his side of the road, about 50 feet up on the hill, there's a big smoldering log. And there was a tall one and a shorter one standing there, kicking at a smoldering log. And that's about it. He said the big one looked like it was probably 10 foot tall. The smaller one was probably 7. Could have been a male and a female. Could have been a adult and a juvenile. But I'm sure they were concerned about the fire. They'd probably chased them out of the area. Who knows? They were back checking things out. But that's about it on that story. Pretty amazing. Then this guy I know, he was elk hunting out in Colorado, and he was walking along the river bottom, and he said there was like a beaver lodge or something. That's what he said, like a beaver lodge. And he said he came up on it and started walking up over it, and the Sasquatch stood up from behind it. They locked eyes for a few seconds. And he said this thing took off the other direction and bounded or ran up a hill, a forested hill. He said it flew up that hill so fast he couldn't believe it. Almost like it had wings, he said. Well, him and his brother went back there later to see if they could find some tracks or something. He said they tried climbing that hill where that thing went. He says it was impossible. He said it was so steep, and he says they were crawling on all fours, and after a little while they just gave up because it was just impossible for him to get up this hill.
In 5
And
miles,
this thing
turn
flew up
right to Market
that
Street.
goddamn hill. So that's that story. I never got a whole bunch of details out of these people. I was lucky enough to get the story out of them to begin with. But I believe these guys. You see the look in their eyes when they're telling the story. The guy that was hunting in Colorado, he was from Minnesota. He told me he was getting goosebumps on his arms while he was telling it. He said he never really thought much or heard much about Sasquatch. Didn't really believe in them. Those are the kind of people I love. I love it when I hear those are the kind of people that see one. Because this thing was like 20 feet away. It was really close. He said it looked like a hairy man. He said, and it was huge. And like everybody else, he didn't even think about pulling his rifle up, I'm sure. Otherwise, he would have said something about that. Like, yeah, I got him in my scope. I tried shooting it as it was running away. He didn't say nothing like that. So, but yeah, both these guys, straight up dudes. The guy I had the encounter in Colorado was kind of a bullshitter and liked to joke around, and so do I. But just because people like to have fun and joke around doesn't mean they're liars. Wish I could run into these guys again. I'd get more details. Ask them to write their story, email their story to me or Steve or Wes or whoever. Doesn't matter who, as long as the story gets out there. I'm not doing this to get famous or make any money. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. Because if you know me, you know I don't lie. Two things I always told my daughter. The two kinds of people that I hate the most are liars and thieves. Sure, I lied to my parents. Who doesn't? There's some things they just don't need to know. Or when you're younger, you know, you don't want to get grounded or whatever. So you wouldn't tell the truth. My dad used to call it fibbing. Now I think a fib.
In 2 miles, turn right to Marvin Street.
God, she's bossy. I think fibbing is just kind of like a little white lie, something that doesn't hurt anybody. Now a lie, that's straight out shit that gets somebody else in trouble or blaming somebody for something they didn't do, making up a story about them. That's a lie. A lie and a fib. Two different things, I think. That's my determination. So anyway, let me see, what other story do I have? I got a few more. Oh yeah, this friend of mine, Nicole, out by Deerwood, Minnesota. She was
In 1 mile, turn right to Marvin Street.
She was living in a camper out on a friend's land. There was I went out there and looked around and took some pictures of some pretty strange looking tree structures. One in particular. And I've got these pictures, but like I said before, pictures don't mean shit. Skeptics and disbelievers will say, "Oh, you made that yourself. It's fake. It's a hoax." So, same with footprints. So, anyway, she said somebody was always throwing rocks and hitting the roof of this tin roof building that these people had there.
Proceed north on Marvin Street in 3/4 of a mile.
Bang on it, and the things would roll down the roof. And she thought it was acorns or something, but there was no oak tree over this building. I took a look. And then she thought maybe it was somebody in the woods trying to scare her. Well, yeah, it was somebody. Something. And one night, maybe more than once, she saw two red eyes out in the woods. She said they were the size of tennis balls. Now that's huge. That's some big eyes, man. Some people have reported smaller, some people have reported larger. And then she told me all the time she would hear voices. She would hear somebody talking out in the woods.
Continue straight on to Burning Bell Road.
But she said she could never make out what they were saying. It sounded like fast gibberish kind of thing. And she was
Proceed
really
on
confused.
Burning Bell Road in 3¼ miles. Continue straight on to
When I started talking to her about this stuff, I told her what it was. And she's like, well, I never even thought about it being Sasquatch. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of people don't. She said, I had no idea. So voices, big red eyes, throwing rocks at a building. And yeah, so she didn't have a sighting, but she had an encounter that she couldn't explain. So she just blew it off. She wasn't scared or nothing. Well, the red eyes kind of scared her, she said, and the voices just confused her. She didn't know what to make of it. Personally, I would have been scared shitless. So, yeah, when I told her it was Sasquatch, she just, wow. And now she's dating a guy. He lives out by Crosby, out mine pit areas, and way out in the woods. Their driveway's like a ½ mile long into the woods, middle of nowhere, and they're down for the Sasquatch thing. I think they've heard some screaming and talking out in the woods by their place. Oh yeah, this place where Nicole was staying, she said the owners of the property.
In 2 miles, continue straight on to Buffalo-Pittsburgh Highway.
Over the period of years that they lived out there, they would hear screaming and hooting and hollering out in their woods, and they'd go out there thinking it was kids partying, and they'd drive out there down the trail and looking for the partiers that are making a ruckus, and they could never find anybody. They never found any fire going, smoldering fire, never found any beer cans or bottles or anything, party materials. They'd go out and drive through their woods and never find anything, go back home. And I'm sure they weren't thinking Sasquatch. They were just probably confused as hell, thinking maybe they were hearing echoes from across the fields or through the woods from somewhere else or something, who knows. But it's obviously loud enough and close enough they could hear it in their house or from their yard, whatever. I didn't.
Straight on to Buffalo-Pittsburgh Highway.
Nicole didn't have the details, and I don't know the people, so I never talked to them. I'd love to talk to them. I'd like to see their look on their face too when you tell them what it is. But yeah, the people, the hardcore skeptics, people who just don't believe it, those are the people you want to see have an encounter or a sighting. And tons of stories Steve has told, and on Wes's channel. And Steve's channel is The Facts by How to Hunt, and Wes's channel is Sasquatch Chronicles. Wes interviews people on his channel over the phone. And he's had quite a few people who
Continue straight
that said
on
they
to
had
Buffalo-Pittsburgh Highway.
no thought of Bigfoot. They didn't know anything about it, never heard anything about it really.
Proceed north on
Maybe
Buffalo-Pittsburgh Highway in 19 miles.
a lot of people talk about
to South Avenue.
that show In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy back in the 70s. So many people had seen that show. I did too, I remember that. I used to get books on it out of the library all the time. And you know, I spent quite a bit of time in the woods, hiking and backpacking and camping. And never saw one, never had rocks thrown at me, never heard any howls or screams or anything like that. But for some reason, I always just felt a little uneasy in the forest. And I knew, you know, bears would run from you. You didn't have to worry about wolves. They would run from you. We don't have cougars or anything like that in Minnesota, or wild hogs. So, I mean, the biggest thing you got to fear in the woods in Minnesota is a squirrel running up your pants or something and biting you. And those things are smaller than you, but man, they can be mean, man, I tell you. So, anyway, so yeah, I always felt uneasy, like just, I don't know why. Well, I know why now. Probably because deep down I knew there were these 8 to 10 foot tall beings covered in hair, not fur, lurking around. Who knows? I was probably being watched most of the time, that I just kind of felt uncomfortable. You just never know. World's hide and seek champion. But yeah, it'd be creepy to see one peeking out from behind a tree like so many people report. So yeah, these you know, all these people writing all these emails, these are statements, and then along with DNA evidence, you know, people send in hair samples and stuff like that. The lab comes back and says, oh, it was contaminated by the collector because he came back human. Well, no, it didn't get contaminated. It's because that DNA is part human. And then along, you know, in court of law, DNA evidence holds water, and so do you know, people write confessions, or not a confession, but they'll write a letter stating the facts. And you know, people wrote a letter and said this person raped me, and then they had DNA evidence to back it up. They'd throw them in jail. But when it comes to this topic, that's not good enough. So anyway, yeah, this is a beautiful country, man. Awesome. I'd like to live out here. But like I said before, I don't know if I want Sasquatch as my neighbor. Actually, it doesn't matter where you live. These things are all over the country, all over the world. In Australia, they've got the Yowie. You know, plus there's different breeds, different races of them. Some of them look more ape-like, some of them look more human-like. I think they understand English, because they do have a language. People have heard them having conversations. And they've even called out people's names from the forest. These people would hear it, and they freak them out. So, anyway, this is video number 2 for my new YouTube channel, Minnesota Sasquatch Trucker at gmail.com. So if you feel like writing me an email, I'd be happy to share your story on here. and keep it confidential if that's what you wish. I won't name names or places. So I did get some feedback on my Craigslist posts, but like I said before, they'd always get flagged for deletion. God, that pissed me off. People at Craigslist are cowards. They're bending over for the government, doing what they tell them to do. Well, they already got in trouble for the hookers advertising, so they're probably do anything they'd say. They probably threatened them and said, we'll shut you down completely if you don't do this, you know. You're lucky we didn't do it already. So anyway, I guess that's about it for now. This is a beautiful country. I'll probably do a video at night, do some night videos too. See if we can catch one crossing the road in front of me so everybody can accuse me of doing a hoax or faking it. That'll be fun. So anyway, I'm gonna sign off for now and keep on trucking.